Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Gameday Gameplay, the sports segment of Console Space. I'm your host Sean Colangelo as always, and joined by the man I envy the most in the wintertime, Todd from Florida. How's it going, Todd?
It's going good, Sean. How you doing?
Not too bad. So I would ask what you're playing. I know what you weren't playing, which was the NHL 19 beta, because you're a jabroni.
I played a little bit of it.
Okay, that's actually the footage that I have for this episode. Did you play the ones mode at all, or what did you do when you were? Okay, what did you
That's
think?
really all I did was ones. I don't know. It was like a cool little thing, but the games are so short that I was like, you know, I don't think it would be something I would invest that like a lot of time in. It'd probably be something I would like load up if I'm waiting for you to finish another game for us to play or something. But
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely cool. I mean, I don't think it's a major selling point for me, but
I had a big issue. Well, I had a couple bugs with it. Well, the biggest issue is people that join it and then don't play. So then it's basically just one-on-one instead of 1v1v1, which makes it a lot more stupid.
Yeah, but it makes it
I
easier.
had one where it does. I had one where all three of our names wouldn't clear off the screen, so I couldn't see anything I was doing with the puck.
That happened to me a good bit. I assume it's just kind of like a bug in the beta.
Yeah.
But
I was like, I can't play. Like I can't see my skater.
Yeah, that was really annoying, for sure. Yeah, I mean, so you didn't really play online or anything?
Nah, I didn't play. I don't usually play online versus with hockey or anything like that unless it's against you, just for fun.
I went like 20-2 or something like that.
Yeah. I know you said they neutered the poke check pretty hard.
Oh my god, I had a game where there were 22 penalties called. And they were pretty much all tripping penalties. Like you pretty much can't poke check it like in that game anymore, or you will get called for tripping.
I don't know. It might be a little bit excessive, but I feel like the last couple NHLs have been pretty bad about people spamming poke check. So.
Yeah, I think they're trying to get rid of that, which I understand, but I mean, there should never be 22 penalties called in one game. That's absurd.
Yeah. Unless you had some idiot running around hitting people on play and stuff.
I will say it seems like the gameplay is with each installment slowing down a little bit. You know, like I hope it doesn't go too far, like in the Madden route where it makes it so realistic that like it's just so slow and like not even fun to play. I wouldn't say it's there by any means yet, but I do notice each year it seems to get a little slower. You know, so we'll see. I mean, I definitely.
Yeah, I think that's why they're throwing these more arcadey things in, like the 3s and the 1s.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't mind the realism to a degree, but I still want to be, ultimately playing a video game, which should be a little bit unrealistic. But besides that, I've just been playing Monster Hunter. They recently had a crossover with Final Fantasy where you can fight a behemoth, which is a pain in the ass. I know, dude. I have almost 300 hours in that game, by the way. So.
Yikes.
Yeah. I know you've been playing. So there's like a remaster of Arkham Asylum, right?
Yeah, Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. It's packaged together. Beat Asylum and did all the Riddler shit that game. Just beat the story in Arkham City, and now I'm just starting to go through and clean that up. Probably will play Arkham Knight afterwards again, even though I've already beat it once, just to finish the trilogy. You know what I mean? But
right. Cool stuff. Well, let's go ahead and get this. This shouldn't be too long an episode. We don't have all that much to cover. I think it was last week. I want to say maybe Tuesday of last week. Was the MLB trade deadline, so I'm just going to run down a couple of the highlights from that. I'm going to go ahead and stumble my way through this, so we'll just get this out of the way.
Sounds good.
We're obviously not gigantic baseball fans, but we want to at least, at least touch on things like this. So Apparently, Bryce Harper from the Washington Nationals, he actually is an All-Star, and he was the NL MVP a couple years back. I guess there were a lot of rumors that he was going to get traded. Um,
I actually did hear a lot about that. I listen to sports radio a lot, going to and from work, like Jim Rome show and Scott Farrell on the way back. Which you probably like Scott. He's a Pittsburgh guy, so he's a big Penguins fan, all that stuff. But
yeah,
they, I mean, they've been talking about baseball the last month or so because there's really nothing else to talk about, and they were talking about Harper a lot and how there's rumors, and Farrell was all like he was adamant that he wasn't getting traded. He's like, there's no way, there's no chance, and I guess he was right, but
well, it says here Washington is only 5.5 games out of first place. Um, yeah, I mean they are one game under 500, but they still aren't that far back, obviously. So,
well, I think the whole thing is that his contract's up after this year, and there's a big consensus that he's not going to come back to Washington.
that would make
So it's
sense.
kind of
I also know part of it is I guess he hasn't been performing quite at the all-star level they are accustomed to.
he's hitting the homers, but his batting average is down. So
I got you.
it's one of those things where he's still getting his home runs, but his overall hits are down. So
Yeah. Well, at any rate, it looks like at least for now he is staying in Washington. As far as after the season, we'll have to see.
yeah,
My hometown, Pittsburgh Pirates. My God, man. Um, they actually made some moves and they not only that, but they actually traded young prospects, which they never do that.
yeah,
They are infamous for trading away their more kind of older experienced players and just hanging on to their prospects and then ultimately not really letting them become true pros. Um,
hmm
they acquired Chris Archer and Keon Keela. I think that's how you say his name. They're both pitchers. I guess they're pretty good pitchers as well. Um, and to, in order to accomplish so, they gave up Austin Meadows, who I guess at one point was considered like an overall top 10 prospect, like in the whole league. And they also gave up Tyler Glasnow, two really good young players. Um, just pretty shocking. Like they don't usually do that.
yeah,
If anything, I thought they would trade players away because that's what they usually do.
yeah.
Um, some people are kind of questioning this one, like why would they do this? But the upside to it is, it looks like here they have control of, I think at least Archer, but possibly each of those guys up through 2021.
There you go.
So presumably, at least they should have a couple pretty good pitchers for the next 3 years. Unless of
Yeah.
course they trade those guys, which you know
Now, do
wouldn't
you think
wouldn't
that
be
that
surprising.
streak they went on kind of forced management's hand with the fans?
I do. I mean, attendance has been really hit hard this year with the Pirates. A lot of fans seem to be kind of catching on to the ownership not really ultimately giving a shit about winning and being more interested in profiting. Um, you know, I mean, back in 2015, they had, I think, the second most wins in baseball, and then, they just tore the team apart. Which
Yeah,
makes that makes no sense. Like, I mean, when you're on the cusp like that, you should be making moves to improve your team,
for
but
sure.
they don't want to pay. So, it's taken a long time, but it looks like the people around here are mostly catching on. I mean, I think a lot of people go to the game just kind of like with their kids or their family, just kind of something to do.
Yeah,
Um, but I think the hardcore fans are pretty over it, and I can't say I blame them. But yes, I do think that I think it was 11 game winning streak.
yeah.
I do
11
think it.
game streak. Yep.
Yeah, I think that forced their hand. They would have looked really, really bad if they would have like traded people off after that streak. So, um, we'll see. I mean, I could see him maybe squeaking in like as a wild card, but ultimately, I think they still have a little more work to do before they're a contender again.
Yeah, well, like you said, the trades, they're not for guys that are going to be leaving anyway, at least, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll see. I mean, that'll depend on how
Well,
the Pirates
not because of
do.
contracts.
Sure.
At least.
The Atlanta Braves added starting pitcher Kevin Gausman. That's really all I know about that.
Yeah, my old Braves. I used to watch them a lot when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hot Atlanta.
Yeah. It's a family thing, I guess. My mom, when she was growing up, only got like TNT as like one of her 3 channels, and so obviously because that's based out of Atlanta, they would ship Braves games, so that was kind of a thing. But
Gotcha. The Dodgers, apparently this past offseason, they like virtually did nothing. Like they made like no moves whatsoever. But which I don't know if I guess that was kind of surprising to a lot of people. But at the deadline they added Brian. I want to say I don't know if it's Brian. It's Dozeir.
Dozier, maybe Doze.
Possibly. I honestly have no idea. But he's a second baseman, and yeah, I mean, LA obviously is a market kind of similar to like the Yankees. They had the money to spend, or at least you think that they would, and I guess that's why a
Oh
lot of
yeah, for
people
sure.
were a little, head scratching over why they didn't really do much this off season. But it looks like they might be trying to spend some money now. So I don't know. See how that works out for Los Angeles.
Mhm.
Um, coming down through. Oh yeah. Speaking of the Yankees, um, they they made some moves. They got some pitchers.
Mhm.
One of which actually used to be on the Pirates. Jay Happ. Um, pretty good pitcher. Uh, I think the Pirates let him go or traded him just because that's what they do. Damn it, I lost my notes. My phone is running like total shit.
Crap. Yeah.
But I know they got J. Happ and who was it? God damn it. Sorry, brother.
J Hap. Oh man, you're good. Take your time. Like you said, neither one of us is really that big into baseball. Just kind of a, I don't know, just sport me and you don't follow for whatever reasons they are. But so not as
Sorry.
versed in the big names.
It looks like Lance Lynn, who I personally have not heard of, but so what I've noticed with, I mean, again, so there were 43 trades. I mean, I'm not gonna go through all those, however, but I did
Yeah.
look at a lot of them before we started recording, and it seems like pitchers move around a lot in the MLB. I don't know why
Yeah,
that is.
that's.
I don't know if kind of a change of scenery thing, that helps us guys. But
I think it's more pitching. You always need good pitching. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's kind of like good goaltending in hockey. I mean, I know goaltenders don't move that much in hockey, but pitching in baseball when it comes to playoffs can be like goaltending in hockey, in that you could hit a hot pitcher and it doesn't matter how good the other team is. You know, the guy's
right.
pitching is hit lights out, then you're gonna have problems. So, um,
Um, now I'm gonna go on to this next part here. There was a little bit of controversy. Um, the Astros acquired Robert Osuna.
mhm.
Have you ever heard anything about this or no?
I have not.
Okay. He is fresh off a 75 game suspension for apparently some kind of case involving domestic abuse.
Hmm.
You can imagine a lot of teams probably didn't want anything to do with that. But
Yeah, I mean, the guy's gonna play at the end of the day, though. If he's good enough to play in the league, he's good enough to play in the league. So.
yeah, I think a lot of it just depends on the front office. I mean, there are teams that will give guys like that a second chance. There are teams that don't want anything to do with all that kind of stuff. So I really think it just depends. It's a little ironic, however, because apparently, like recently, there were several Houston Astros players that were actually like tweeting out like against domestic abuse. So it could be a little awkward in the locker room, I guess. But whatever. I mean, they're all pros. I'm sure they'll be okay.
Yeah.
But I think that was kind of the most controversial move out of everything. That's pretty much all I'm going to go through. Those are the biggest ones as far as I can see. The last thing that I will say, this was kind of funny. Apparently, and hey, this is not too far from you, Todd. Your Tampa Bay Rays.
Tampa Bay Rays.
They do not have a starting pitcher on their depth chart.
Oh, that's interesting. What do they all have? Just
Like,
relief pitchers?
I guess they have like a bunch of relief guys and whatever, but technically speaking, they don't have a starting pitcher, so I can't imagine that's good.
Tampa Bay, isn't that who they got Chris Archer from? The Pirates?
I believe. Let me double check.
I'm pretty sure that's where they got him from, because I remember reading something about Austin Meadows going there.
I can look that up real quick. I am not sure. I think you might be right.
Yeah, but so that obviously didn't help them because I'm guessing he was a starting pitcher and they traded him away.
Yes, the Rays.
Yep.
Yep. So I don't know why you would be trading away your starting pitchers if you like virtually don't have any.
Well, from what I've seen, the Rays, I think they're like near bottom of the league right now, so they don't really care if it's a relief guy coming in, not really doing what he normally does, probably.
Right. Yeah, that's. I don't know. I have to wonder if that's ever happened in the history of the league before. I guess it's possible that it has, but that's pretty insane. But that's about all I got. Like I said, I mean, not our sport of choice, but as far as for my research, those are most of the highlights. So I'll let you. So I know really all we have left are just a few things that happened in the NHL. So I'll let you go ahead.
I got a couple things to touch on NBA and NFL wise. Not
right.
Not a lot by any means, but just a little bit. And then, but there was some pretty decent movement in the NHL this week, so we'll cover that too. But the first thing I want to cover in terms of NBA, it's not really sport related, but I don't know if you hear anything about LeBron opening that school in Akron.
I did, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, really cool. Don't know how much of his own money he invested in it. I'm guessing a significant portion, but he opened a school, in case anyone's not aware, for kids that are underprivileged and in kind of high danger areas, at risk children basically. Free tuition, obviously. They do a lot of, they're going to do a lot of after school stuff to try to get them placed in college. A whole bunch of cool stuff this school's doing. And just really cool to see. I might not be LeBron's biggest fan on the court, but the dude does back it up off the court. He's known for doing stuff like this in terms of the community outreach, especially in Ohio where he's from. So
yeah,
that's good to see. Over on the gridiron, not really any big news team movement-wise, but they did induct the 2018 Hall of Fame class this week. Some pretty big names from kind of our childhood in terms of football. Guys that made it in this year. Brian Urlacher is one of them. I remember when I first started watching football, Brian Urlacher was like the most feared defensive player in the league. Like,
yeah, he's a badass.
You did not want to take a hit from Brian Urlacher.
No, you did not.
He would rock you in the next week.
Yeah.
Ray Lewis actually made it in this time, which I did not know Ray Lewis is the only defenseman ever to ever have, like, I think it's 40 plus sacks and 30 plus interceptions. Um,
Oh wow, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
in his career. And then two of the biggest wide receivers we've ever seen play the game, T.O. and Randy Moss, made it in.
Oh, they put To in.
They did put T.O. in. T.O. did not go to the induction ceremony.
Yeah, well, no, I mean
he,
he absolutely. I mean, like in terms of stats, you can't really argue his stats,
no,
but I
no,
know that he
he's
was,
the second
wasn't
best statistical wise receiver to ever play the game behind Jerry Rice.
right.
I mean,
I just know that not not favorably looked upon due to his personality, I guess, and so
yeah,
I was wondering
yeah.
if that might hold him out, but
But I mean, he's not far behind Jerry Rice, and I'll be completely honest with you. T.O. never played with a quarterback as good as Rice did with Montana and Steve Young. So I mean,
yeah, it's a good
you could
point.
make the argument that Terrell Owens, in terms of individual himself, was probably the best receiver to ever play. But personally, what I think one of the best receivers to ever play, and I think honestly Randy Moss is better than T.O. from what I've seen of him. He doesn't have the stats because I don't think he played as long. But when Randy Moss was at his prime, you couldn't stop Randy Moss, dude. Um,
Yeah, that's a close one. Um,
Culpepper, when he played in Minnesota, all he had to do was just air the ball out. It didn't even matter if it was accurate. Moss would go up and bring it down.
yeah, pretty much.
Um, and then he had that crazy season in New England, which I'm sure you're aware of, the year that Brady broke the touchdown record, which Manning then broke again. But that was the year he had like 21 touchdowns or something crazy like
Oh
that for a receiver.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was absurd, dude.
yeah. But but yeah, that was there was some other ones, some of the older players, ones I'm not as familiar with because I didn't really have a lot of historical background in football. But it was cool to see those because those are guys that I grew up watching, pretty much all of them.
Right, right.
So,
Same here,
but
yeah.
yeah, that's all I had for the NFL. Let's get back onto the ice, where we spend most of our time watching sports. But excuse me, um, a lot of signings this week, and it's like RFA guys, guys that went to arbitration or guys that are still waiting to get their RFA contracts renewed. They're starting to come in. Let's go down the list here. The most recent one that I saw, John Gibson, um, who is a Pittsburgh boy, in case you did not know. He's actually
Yeah,
from the Pittsburgh area.
yeah.
He got 8 years, 6.4 million per year.
Not bad.
So that's an extension. He still has 1 year left on his contract, so that's an extension after that one. But Anaheim is doubling down on Gibson as their starting goalie, and they probably should because he's young and he's really good. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
uh, Now this one was actually a signing; it wasn't an extension. William Karlsson signed a 1 year deal with Vegas, 5.25 million. Um, Vegas is rolling the dice with this one because if Karlsson has another year like he had this year, that 5.25 is going to go up to about 9. They probably could have signed him long term for a little bit less, but they're I think they're kind of wanting to hold off because obviously before last year he never hit anything close to that, so they're trying to see if that's a you know fluke or what's going to happen. But
Yeah,
it could come back to bite him.
I think it's kind of a 1 year prove it deal.
Hmm.
Um,
That's exactly what it is. But
yeah.
like I said, it could come back to bite him if he ends up proving it. So,
Yeah, if he drops 40 again, they're gonna be paying a lot of money. So.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Two big signings in for RFAs in Ottawa, and I think the biggest news about these is they're both 1 year deals. Cody Ceci got 1 year for 4.3 million, which he was asking 6 at his arbitration. That was actually an arbitration, led deal. The arbitrator is the one that gave them that value. So, and then Mark Stone, this one they signed before he actually went through arbitration. He got 1 year, 7.35 mil.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit. I think yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
CC asking for 6 mil. That's freaking absurd. I love him at 4.3. I think that's
I
that's
still
actually
think it's
pretty
a little bit
fair.
high for what he brings. He does
Slightly
not have
maybe,
good
but
good box scores with his possession stats. I would have probably, if I'm Ottawa, I probably would have wanted to get him around 3.5, 3.75, but it is only a 1 year deal, so
yeah. And
it is what
then
it is.
I know Stone was asking for 9, wasn't he?
Yeah, but again, it's an arbitration thing. I think they always go into that high if you're the player.
We're
Um,
sure, sure.
I don't think, honestly, I know you said you think that's a little high for Stone. I really don't. If you look at the fact that guys like Evander Kane just got a long-term deal of 7 mil, and Mark Stone puts up the same exact numbers, if not better numbers, than Evander Kane. So
Yeah.
playing on worse teams. Well, maybe not Buffalo, but the Sharks at least are a better team than Ottawa. Um, and again, I think pretty much every team
Yeah,
in the league is a better team than Ottawa right now.
like I said, I don't think it's a gross overpayment, and with the cap going up, I mean, everybody's going to get a little more than what they're probably worth. So,
Yeah, yeah. The biggest thing of that one to me is the fact that it's a 1 year deal, which tells me either A, Ottawa didn't want to commit to him long term, or B, he did not want to commit to Ottawa long term. And I'm thinking it's probably more like B, given what's going on in that locker room. And if they lose Stone next year, because this was his last year of RFA, and so after this contract expires, he's officially a UFA next year and can sign wherever he wants.
yeah,
Um,
and probably will.
so yeah, can't really blame him for wanting to get out of that dumpster fire. But up in New York, Brady Shea has re-signed. They gave him 6 years, 5.25 mil a year. So they're pretty high on Shea up there. As I
Wait,
think he's their 3D, right?
who's this?
Brady Shea for the Rangers.
Wow, somehow I can't even say I've heard of him.
Uh, the name might throw you off because it's spelled Skjeej, but it's pronounced Shea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. But he's a second pairing defenseman for him. He might have even been getting first minutes after they traded McDonough.
Yeah, possibly.
He's pretty good. I mean, he's pretty good young defenseman. He reminds me a lot of like a Dumoulin kind of guy that he's not going to light up the score sheet for you, but he's a really solid defensive defenseman.
Yeah.
Um, from what I've seen of him. Um, so I don't know. I haven't watched enough Rangers games, especially this year, to tell you if that's worth the money. But I'm gonna guess it's probably at least close with it. But if we're gonna talk about contracts that aren't worth the money, at least in my opinion, here's the big one, Sean. Tom Wilson, 6 years, 5.17 mil a year.
Yeah. Um,
I'm gonna preface any talk we have with
for
this. Tom Wilson's career high in points is 35 points
yeah, that's what he dropped this past
this year.
season, correct? Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, man, I suppose the arguments there to be made, the intangibles that he brings, the space that he opens up by, you know, usually by hitting people in the head.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I,
He did have a good playoffs. He dropped 15 points in 21 games in the playoffs. I mean, there's no disputing that. That said, he was on a line with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov. And I kind of have the opinion that if you throw me on a line with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov, I could probably drop at least 10 just from being on the ice while they're on the ice.
sure, sure.
So,
Yeah,
um,
I'd have liked to see him somewhere down around maybe like 4. I could have lived with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I mean that contract for that price like for just for his raw output is skewed for sure.
They better hope that he doesn't regress back to his normal, because that's going to look ugly if he's, continues to be a 30-point player, making, almost 5.5 mil.
Yeah, I mean,
Now the term's not bad because he's only 24, so that's going to end when he's 30. You know, that's not a bad term for a guy his age, but man, I can't see Tom Wilson being worth over 5 mil.
yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, like they're pretty much playing him like a first line player, which he was, but in terms of like, I mean, 35 points is ideally what you want to be seeing from like your third line guys.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know.
Now he wasn't up on that first line all year. They were
That's
trying
true.
some other pairings around. So to be fair, he wasn't permanently in that spot. I think next year they're gonna put him as a mainstay on that line with Ovechkin and Kuzi. Because the biggest thing I guess from reading other Capitals fans' opinions, the biggest thing he's gonna bring is the fact that Ovechkin hasn't had a solid right winger to play with since basically Simon, and it's just
Yeah.
been rotating, whoever they have there to play with him, and usually Backstrom, and now it's Kuznetsov. So even if Wilson does somewhat underperform, if he could just stay good enough to play on that line, it'll give them some, some continuity, something to work off of.
Yeah. And I mean, I think he probably will. I mean, he obviously is somewhat of a goon, but for being a goon, he's actually a decent hockey player. So
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I despise Tom Wilson, but I can't tell you that he's not talented. I mean, he's
yeah,
got the talent to be a top six forward. If he reminds me so much of Marchand in the way that he could be so good if he would just clean up his game.
yeah, or maybe even kind of like a Lucic in a way.
Yeah. Well, maybe Lucic in his heyday, not Lucic now, but
Oh, sure, sure.
but but yeah. But that's pretty much all the re-signings we had and the extensions that whatnot. There was one big trade that happened this week, though, and I'm sure you're aware of it. Buffalo has traded prospect Cliff Poo. That's a great name,
Cliff
by the way.
Poo,
A
Cliffy
2019 second
Poo.
rounder, and then a 2020 third and sixth rounder to Carolina for Jeff Skinner. Uh, Jeff Skinner, obviously, he's a perennial 20 to 30 goal scorer. Um, doesn't really light the score sheet up that much for a guy that does put up that many goals. He's not that big a passer, but I mean that's not what you're getting him for. Um, he's only making 5.75, I think, but he does only have 1 year left. Um, it's really hard for me to pin down what Buffalo's trying to do right now,
Yeah, that's
because
what I was gonna say. I mean, it's almost
on the
like
one
they're
hand,
yeah.
yeah, on the one hand, they're going out and get guys like Skinner. They got guys like they brought in Sheary from Pittsburgh, who, for all of his, what me in Pittsburgh, have some issues with Sheary. He is a decent, second, third line forward if you have to play him there.
Yeah.
He can handle his own. Um, they're bringing in, obviously, they got Dolly coming into the draft. But then they turn around and they trade away O'Reilly, which, O'Reilly was their big 2C. They don't
Yeah,
really have much behind Eichel now.
yeah, but they did get a lot back for him, didn't they?
Got a first, Sabotka, um, Berglund, I think, and then a bunch of picks. Also, they got Tage Thompson. So Tage Thompson's going to be a good player. I don't know when he's going to be a good player. I don't know how long he's out. He was playing some games for St. Louis last year. Um, he might end up slotting in as their 3C right now in Buffalo. He could be really good. Um, they've also got some prospects that could come up. They've got Willie Nylander's little brother, Alex Nylander. He could end up coming up in their top six. So Buffalo's an intriguing. I don't think they're far off from being back to being, possibly a top three team in the Atlantic. Um,
Well, I was. I mean, you know, we'll see what happens with Jersey. We'll see if they take a step forward or back. But
mhm.
if they kind of regress at all for any reason, I could see the Sabres sneaking in a wild card spot. Um,
It's possible. It's possible.
now,
Now, you got to remember, Florida. I think Florida is going to be a good team this year, and I think Florida could potentially even be a top three team in the Atlantic. I think they're at least going to be a wild card team at the very worst. Behind, obviously, the top two are going to be Toronto and Tampa, and then you got to figure Boston's probably still going to be in contention in the Atlantic. Um, so it really just depends on the Metro, and if the Metro is going to be like it was last year, where everyone was in the middle of the pack, or if the Metro is going to be like it was 2 years ago, when there were five teams with like 90 to 100 points. That
yeah.
depends on if Florida's going to make it or not. But I really think Florida could end up being a wild card spot or wild card team this year.
Now I'll say this: Ryan O'Reilly's a good player, obviously.
Uh huh.
But isn't his cap at like 8.5?
Seven something, seven
Oh,
point
okay.
three, I think. It's
That's
high.
that's not as bad. For some reason I thought it was like 8.5, and I was like, I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
Um,
O'Reilly, he's not as. I mean, he can score, and he's probably going to still get you like 50 to 60 points. But he's more of a two-way defender, two-way center, kind
sure.
of playing both sides of the ice.
Yeah.
But I guess it just depends on who they slot in at center there. It could even be Reinhardt was a natural center. He could slide back down into that role. Obviously, Eichel's going to be their 1C. That's not going to
Yeah.
change.
Well, I mean, I don't know how true this is, but what I read about that trade was because I don't think they were actively shopping O'Reilly. I think they just saw that as an offer they couldn't refuse, really, and they were like, okay.
With all the picks and Tage Thompson,
Yeah,
it would be hard to turn it down because Tage
yeah,
Thompson, like I said, he's gonna be a good player. Plus, you get a first round pick out of it. Yeah, I mean,
right.
and you get out of O'Reilly's, you know, kind of overinflated contract. He's a good player, like you said. I like O'Reilly. The problem is he was paid for his defensive prowess, not his scoring. And in this league, you kind of have to pay for your scoring.
Right.
So, plus they've already got some issues with Okposo. You know, he's not living up to his $6 million contract there at all. Um, Eichel can't stay healthy.
Hmm.
Things like that. But yeah, we'll just have to see what Buffalo does. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team this year, but I think they're close. I think they're probably 1 or 2 years out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I could see it.
and I could see them finishing as high as fifth in the Atlantic this year. But I do think that Toronto, Tampa, Boston, and Florida are going to be above.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds about right to me, my friend.
That's all I got, man. That's all that's been going on in the sports world.
Well, at least in our sports world, anyway. All right, man. Well, thanks always for the info. We usually, I mean, it's slow right now, obviously, because there's not much, aside from baseball, there's not much happening.
Three of the big four are in their off season. So.
Yeah, in the fall, we probably will be posting this once a week again, but for now, I would say probably every 2 or so. But yeah, like, share, subscribe, and comment if you're watching, and if you don't mind, also check out the Console Space podcast. We get together to talk about video games, and we just recently did our first ever episode of Chords and Consoles, which is kind of the same thing as as our main podcast, but we have a band on and kind of interview them. We had our friends Concrete TP. They are a rock band on first, so check that out. And yeah, I guess that about covers it. So we'll do this again probably in a couple weeks, and yeah, thanks again, man.
Absolutely, dude.
Later. You too.
Yep.